Hello and welcome to our March user group meeting. It's about Excel and PowerShell, a powerful data duo. Let me just introduce myself. I'm Constantin. I work with PowerShell nearly every day. I have two Twitter handles. One Twitter handle is above is my own, and the second one is for the user group. And if you want, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or Xing and other networks. Yeah. So just some advertisement for the user group. If someone wants to speak at my user group, the call for papers at Sessionize is open. You can submit any session about PowerShell, and if I think it's a good fit, then I will get in touch with you, and we can work something out, like what I did with Doug. Then, if you want to come to Antwerp this year, I speak at the PSConf. I speak at the PSConf.eu. One session about development environment for Universal, and the second one SQL Server Lab with Automated Lab in 3 ways: PSC, pure Automated Lab, and some Automated Lab with some Automated Lab with nearly no Automated Lab. So I will explain it in the session. So if you want to come, go to psconf.eu, get your tickets. The prices, I think, they will rise, I think, next month. So if you want to have a cheaper price, please go and go to psconf.eu and get your ticket, and then I will see you at PSConf. Thank you very much. So, session will be recorded. Mute your microphone, please, that we don't have any background noises. And I will monitor the chat. So if anyone wants, if anyone has any questions, can go through the chat or can unmute yourself and ask Doug. I think during the presentation we can. I think it's good that we can make it a bit interactively to ask questions and so on. Yeah, and today's speaker is, I hope I pronounced his name right and also write his name correctly, is Doug Finke.
That is correct.
Thank you for joining. You are in a different time zone, so I think it's earlier than we are here.
Yep.
Thank you for attending, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Constantine, and thanks for accepting my talk. And that is the correct way to spell it and the correct way to pronounce it. Most people call me Finke, and I have to tell them it's a silent E, but that's okay. I'm going to share my screen, and as Constantine said, feel free to interrupt at any time with a question. If I am going to be covering it in my talk, I'll hold off on it. If it's a question that I think isn't going to take us out into the weeds, then I'll work to answer that. Love the interaction. And if it's a very complex kind of question, we can talk offline, and I can send you an invoice, and we can work out the solution. So as always, we all have a little bit of advertising, but first, so PowerShell and Excel. It's a lot of people know about it. We were talking about how long Constantine was using it. He's been using it for like 2-3 years. And I went back and looked at my GitHub repo, and I can't believe, I think my first check-in was almost 10 years ago. And we'll talk a little bit, not just about what I built, show you how it works, or how some ideas about what's inside of it. But I'll talk a little bit about why I built it and how I went about doing that. So if you're a budding tool maker in PowerShell, you might get some ideas. So a little bit about me. I'm a 15x Microsoft MVP. I wrote a book called PowerShell for Developers. I organized the New York City PowerShell meetup. And speaking of which, so next week, a week from today, we're going to have Jaap Brazer. And I apologize for the Americanization of the names I say. Not the best, but it is what it is. So Jaap's going to be on. Actually, I just talked to him this morning. I do a series of 2.5 Geeks. I had Chrissy Lemaire on. I had Merlin from Berlin or Belgium on. Jaap's going to be on. And when I talked to him this morning, he said, anything that we should prepare? I said, let's just talk about all the updates in the last 2 weeks that happened in the AI space. And he said, we both said at the same time, yeah, if we run out of stuff to talk about, we don't know what we're doing. There's just so much stuff going on in AI. It's amazing. So in April, next month, I'm going to have Stephen Judd on. He's going to be fresh back from the PowerShell conference on the West Coast, the DevOps Global Summit. And he and I are going to talk about AI and whatnot. And we'll chat with AI. He's been using my module for PowerShell AI. So yeah, that should be fun, I think. Also, next week, when is it? Next Tuesday, I'll be speaking at the Experts. It's in Austria. It's a user group. I go Roman and Patrick. And so that'll be Tuesday. You have to take a look and see if you can find that. So if you want to hear me talk, it's going to be purely on artificial intelligence, on AI. Both of those folks, they also went to the MVP Summit. I went to the MVP Summit remotely. They actually flew from Austria to the West Coast and did it. Good for them. And yeah, so and actually I did a live stream a week or so, last week I think it was, talking about the AI Summit. And basically, because of the NDA, I had nothing to talk about. So we talked about other things. So let's continue on. We'll just a couple of slides, and then we'll kick in. So the agenda: import Excel module, providing exceptional Excel automation. Why I started the module, because Python made me do it. We'll look at PowerShell, Excel, the component object model. If you know what that is, we'll take a little bit of a look at it. And things like how it works just like import CSV, except and import and export CSV, but it does it with Excel. If you want to catch up with me, you can email me directly. You can catch up with me on the X platform at dfinke, D-F-I-N-K-E. I have a blog. Check out my GitHub repos. I cover tons of technology, both PowerShell and not, and I have things that I build and make public. And you can see my YouTube channel if you subscribe there. That's where I post all my meetups and live streams and whatnot. And I put out snippets and I put out videos and tutorials and I post them on there. And if you subscribe there and get notifications when I do those, that's up to you. Cool. So let's do some demos if we're ready. Little easing going on in the back there. Okay, so we'll go through some examples. And what I'm going to use here, can I get the chat up here as well? I don't know.
I will monitor. So if there's anything going, I will interrupt and ask a question then.
Okay, cool. Because I just wanted to ask, like, how many people here have heard of Type of 1 in the chat?
Yeah, just raise hand or so.
Yeah, that's cool.
If you heard about this
interactive notebooks and whatnot. So this is I do my demos in this. I do a lot of development in it with PowerShell. It's called Polyglot Interactive Notebooks. Good. We got a couple of hands raised. Excellent. And it's based on .NET. So you can do things like I'm going to break my demo. So here you can see I can each one of these cells, for example, right? This is PowerShell in here. I'll show you in a minute. I can click the run button. You can think of each cell as being in the console, right? That I'm typing it in the console and pressing enter. If I come down here and click on the PowerShell, I get an options that I can change the cell to work with the C#, F#, HTML, JavaScript, KQL, Mermaid, SQL, so on. So it's a really interesting, cool tool. And what's nice as well is that when I run all this good stuff, it'll actually save the results in after I run it, which you'll see. And then when I save the notebook, I can put it on GitHub or send it to a colleague, put it on a share, email it, and then they can see what I did and the answers that I got, and then they can do what they want with it. They can tweak the code that's in the cell. They can tweak the cells above it. And you can think of each cell as like as you're typing in PowerShell. Like if you did a history, you would see everything you did. Well, each cell is there ready to be tweaked and run again. The other nice thing is at the top, this is if I double click on this, it's just Markdown, right? So if you're familiar with Markdown, you can document what you're doing, your code. You can document your process. Oops, what did I do? There we go. You can document your process, and you can include images. You can include links. So getting into the demo, you can get the PowerShell Excel module by show of hands. How many people have the PowerShell Excel module installed on their machine? If you don't,
definitely
awesome.
Yes.
I've got it installed too, so that's a good thing.
Nice.
Cool. We got
just want to add something to the notebook stuff.
Yeah.
I had Rob Sewell on.
Yep.
I think it was 1 year ago or so, and he was talking also about this. And actually, Microsoft uses it heavily. So if you, for example, open a ticket with Microsoft and have some SQL problems or so, they will give you a notebook. You will run the notebook on your machine or on the server where you have problems. Send it back to them, and they have the live data inside a notebook without getting on call with you only for the solution stuff. So they have a first glimpse of what is your environment and so on. So it's a really useful tool.
Yeah. Awesome addition. Yeah. That's really cool. The other thing to note as you bring that up is oops, what did happen here? Am I still connected? Let's get in the right window. This is all based on something called Jupyter Notebooks, which is also an extension that you could add into Visual Studio Code. And that's come from the Python world. It's been around 100 years as Python. So Microsoft decided, let's make one for the .NET languages. So it's if you get that deep, or you look into the different communities, these notebooks are quite the way to do interesting stuff worth putting in the toolbox. Yeah, cool. So you can install the module, import Excel. You can go up to the PowerShell gallery, check it out, or you can pop up on GitHub, and you can take a look at the code. You can take a look at some of the discussions, pull requests. There's issues that may or not be outstanding. There's a bunch of things about how to use it. So if somebody you're trying to teach, off you go. You can send them there, and they can get some insight. So let's start doing some stuff. So why did I start down this path? So back in 2015 and even earlier, let's take a look at, let's actually open up this file. And this is another thing I like about VS Code. Hopefully everybody's not using ICE, but that's up to you. Depends on your work. So that's a Python file. And, I've known about Python since it started in the 90s, played around with it, did some professional development work with it, but chose to go a different path. They always had cool tools. They've always had an amazing community, and people plug anything and everything into Python. And when I saw PowerShell hit the market in early 2000, it's like, oh, I thought it had real teeth, and was hoping to contribute these kinds of things, whatnot. And, as I got more into PowerShell and I liked it better than Python in certain ways, I was like, oh, let's flesh out the ecosystem, and could only take it so far. Anyway, so if you squint your eyes, line 2, it says it's importing matplotlib. That's an import module, right, in PowerShell. Oh yeah, Bruce Payette. I asked earlier. A couple of people knew him, so the new joiners, if you know the name Bruce Payette, raise your hand. That'd be awesome. No, hey, there we go. Hey, there you go. Awesome.
Too.
So Bruce Payette was hired by Jeffrey Snover to write the language PowerShell. And Bruce, if you ever get a chance to meet him, we were talking about he'll be at the conference in Europe. I say Antwerp, but I think that's an Americanization of it. So he's going to be over there talking about his new Braid language. Chat with the guy. He knows everything and anything about all languages on the planet, programming languages. That is. So so he and I. So if you've heard of Manning Publishing, right, the book company. So they reached out to me last year, and I said, no, it's too early to do anything on PowerShell and AI because things are changing too much. We talked for a couple of months, and then I bowed out. And then they called me about a few weeks ago and they said, hey, it's been a year. Let's talk about PowerShell and AI. I'm like, yeah, it might be the time. Things are settling down, or at least good enough to write a book that won't disappear in 6 months. And I said I would write it. And I had said, let me ask Bruce Payette if he would co-author. And Bruce agreed. So we submitted a draft table of contents Friday, and they're looking at it and figuring things out. They want to move ahead. It all depends on if they like our style. I don't see how they couldn't like having Bruce Payette and me writing a book for them, but we'll see. Anyway, so just wanted to bring that up. So import, you can see how Bruce Payette's thinking happened, right? So you can do an import module as PLT, you alias it to that. And if you squint, line 5, that's an array in Python. If you take the brackets off, that's a PowerShell array. Put a $sign there, take off all the good stuff. So we have 2 arrays. Then we do a plt.plot, the X and Y. And then we add labels to those, the X and Y labels. Then we put a title on it, and then we do a show. So now, make sure I'm in the right directory. Excellent. And I can type, hopefully, PLY, simple plot. Oh, look at that. Let's try it again. So I just ran from the command line that script, and I got a chart. That's what I wanted in PowerShell, and I looked for that for years. And then I was like, well, maybe I can do it in Excel, and I can marry up Excel and PowerShell. So I went down that route. Now, yeah, I guess it's better to show some of those things. So if you know COM objects, component object models, okay, so I've known about COM. Its predecessor was DDE, which is called Dynamic Data Exchange, and you could do things back with VBS and all kinds of different things with Excel, and talk from Excel into Word, and you could plug in charts and plug in paragraphs from Word into Excel, vice versa, and then that grew into the component object model. So PowerShell early version, when you did a new object, you could actually use the hyphen COM object, right, as a parameter, and then you could pass in which Windows application you wanted to do. So let's do this. This should be fun. I'm going to run. Now we get to first see how a cell works. I'll run this, and we should see Excel pop up. And there it is. Now, what did that do? How many people have played with COM objects? Any hands? So what that did, excellent. Yeah, you have, Constantin. Awesome.
Very easy, not
not deep. Awesome.
It's a pain sometimes.
Yeah. It's a total pain, which is why I'm bringing this up. So,
yeah.
So I'm actually controlling now. So I've got an instance of the Excel application running, and I said visible is equal to true. And now you can see Excel on the left-hand side. Next up, watch what this does. You keep an eye on Excel. I'll run this. I get a worksheet and a sheet, right, by doing workbooks.add. Okay, so now I'm working with the object model inside of Excel. And this, if you're familiar with Visual Basic Application, this is how we worked with this stuff years and years and years. So that's one of the reasons that Microsoft or PowerShell team said, hey, let's make a COM object, and then we can surface the object models from Office, and people could be good to go. So I was used to that. I was like, okay, this is a way. Now I'm going to run this, and I can grab the sheet 1. So I'm going against the array worksheets, grab sheet 1, put it into WS. Now this is kind of cool. I'm going to poke data into Excel. So watch, I'm going to run this, but keep your eye on Excel. And I just poked a bunch of headers in there, right? So I poked the ID, product, quantity, etc. And now I'm going to poke a record of data. The first record, okay, I'm just poking the data. Now, what's also interesting about this, when I first started doing it, is notice I say for row 2, column 5, so that's cell E2, I'm actually using not the dot value, but dot formula, and I can poke Excel formulas into it. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, that's pretty slick. And then if I look, not only do I get the cell, double click on this, not only do I get the formula I'm poking, but Excel will automatically render it. So I'm like, oh, this has some real interesting capabilities. We'll just do a couple more records, rows 2 and 3, and I'm just doing the same thing, poking some data, poking a formula. Awesome. Now, the challenge with this is if I wanted to give this to a user or I wanted to make this a batch process, I always have to make sure Excel is installed. It has to come up. I have to kind of make it invisible. I have to turn off screen updating, all kinds of dancing around to make Excel, because it wants to be a UI. It doesn't want to be a batch process, which I never understood why Microsoft didn't make that happen. But anyway, they do a lot of different things that I don't understand. Hard to believe. So you have to do all kinds of different stuff. Now, if I actually if I close this, right, it'll prompt to save, I think. Yep. So I'm not going to save it. If I want to save that in PowerShell, right, if I want to close down Excel, I have to do things the old way, right, because it's a COM object. I think it was built in C++. So you have to do things like marshal reference by object. You have to drain the cache. You have to do a garbage collection to make it work, and it doesn't always happen. And if you bring up Excel like I did and poke data into it, and it's a user is sitting in front of everything, then they can actually accidentally click on it and interrupt the automation process. So I was like, well, that's a cute demo, but it's not worth doing. So I was still looking for what I wanted to do. Did I want to build WPF applications or WinForm applications or XAML? That I want to go down the terrible route of doing JavaScript and all that kind of stuff in a web browser. Is that better? And that's just my opinion. Lots of people don't agree. They like using those different tools. So what's the next set of problems? We're all comfortable and know about export CSV, right? So I can run this, which get service, and I can pipe it to get CSV. And it creates a file, and I can, if I say .gsv CSV for the get service, it'll actually run and open in Excel, right? So people use it all the time. In fact, I see lots of stuff on social media. People go, I'm using PowerShell and I generate a CSV and I send it to management. And then I get on there to poke fun. And I go, if you used export Excel, you'd have an actual spreadsheet to work with and you make management happy. And people say, oh, that's not my problem. That's their problem. Like, okay, it might actually give you a raise if you can actually deliver. Now, why is that a problem? Because if I come in here, you can see this, everything is squished together. I can't really see everything. If I size this like this, right, I can get, oh, okay. That means every time I give this to a user, they have to size their script, what they're doing. The problem is, even if I save it, which I won't, and then reopen it, it loses all its formatting because comma separated values know nothing about Excel formatting. So as I continued now I've been looking for like these kind of solutions for years, right? No matter what programming language I work with or environment I'm in, I like doing visualizations because they're fun, helps me think about things, help others, and there's always some kind of friction to get that to happen. So let's see some stuff with export Excel. So I'm going to use the same get service, right? And I'm going to just pipe get service to export Excel. Let's see what happens. So that's the easiest way to get things to work. And all of a sudden, out of the box, right? Somebody add up how many characters that is. And this works with any kind of PowerShell object that's an array with objects that have properties. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So I'm just saying get service, export Excel. I get zebra striping. I get column sizing that's automated. I even get drop down so I can actually filter, right? So I can take that off, select those two. So this is really playing into the strengths of Excel. And that just all got automated from PowerShell. You didn't have to tell it about looping or how many records you have. So when you pipe it into export Excel, it figures out how much data it has. We call it reflection, but I figure out the property names. I put the property names at the top, and I put the data underneath, and off we go to column S or so, right, with all the data. What I don't do is I don't unroll internal properties. So you have to shape your data to the way that you want it before you export to Excel. It's magical, but it's not that magical. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and it costs you a lot of performance if you dive into each object and try to work with it and so on. Yeah.
Exactly. So if I was going to unroll all of this stuff, I'd have to figure. So there are certain things in here, like when you do dates and numbers, I do figure out what kind of data is being poked into Excel, and I'll format it correctly so it lines up all right. But if I started playing around with all these different arrays, I could go off into forever. Plus, I'm a lazy coder, and I was like, I don't care. I'm not going to let the user do it. So that was when I started building. Notice it's called Import Excel, right? Why is it called Import Excel? Because when I started figuring this out, I just wanted to read Excel data at first. And when I got it to work, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'll just throw it up on my repo, see if people, show some people, see if they're interested, get their opinions, get some feedback. So I stayed with the name import, but then the export came, and then the formatting came, and all that kind of. So it's a pretty weird, because people go, but if it's import Excel, all it can do is import. I'm like, no, that was my mistake, and I was too lazy to go back and rename it. Okay, so moving on. Any questions so far? So far we haven't shown much, but let's take a look. Now I'm going to go back up here. Hope I'm not jumping around too much. So we saw the Python, right, that did the little plot. So here is the same thing in PowerShell. So instead of setting up an array, I find it much easier to put data like this in a string for demo purposes, and then do a convert from CSV, because I don't work with arrays directly, and I work with arrays of objects with property names. So by doing it from CSV, I'm going to name each one of these with an XY. I'm going to create an Excel file, and for demos, I always remove it before I do it. And here's how you do a new Excel chart definition. You give it the XY range. I want to put it in column 4. I'm going to name it. I don't want a legend, and the chart type I want is a line. So notice I'm saying the range, I'm not giving it like A1 to A2. I'm giving it the actual names of the properties. How do I do that and make it work? I use -auto-name range when I export the data. And when you do specify that switch in the code, I take the names of the properties and I set it up inside of Excel. So let's just take a look at what this does. We'll run it, keep the fingers crossed. I don't know why I'm getting submit. And there's the XY data. And here's my plot. You can do this. You can have 1 chart, 2 charts, 10 charts, 15 charts, put charts on separate pages, whatever you want. I really started to like this because it's like, oh, I can see my data that I'm working with, and I can do graphics about different parts of it, and it really tells a story. So the auto name range, if I drop down up here, see X and Y's are here. So if I click on X, it highlights it. If I click on Y, it also highlights it. If that data was on a different sheet, it would actually go to that page and highlight and show the highlighted data. I wired all that up into Excel by saying auto name range, but then the rest of it's all handled by Excel's GUI. And that's 50 years of development by Microsoft. So there's a lot of cool things that you can leverage with this. So wanted to show that. Now, dialing back, how many people know what bracket math : tan 30 does? We got a hand raise. All right. So this is how you tap into, now let's put it this way. When I was a Visual Basic expert, and I knew enough C++ and all that kind of stuff that I could be really dangerous, because I could take people's C++ code, make it work in Visual Basic, and do really cool things with it, while everybody thought Visual Basic was a toy. But the point is that if you learn Visual Basic and you learn some of the VBX and custom controls, you could do really amazing things, and then only then you could dip into C++ to make it even cooler, or make it run faster or better. And the same thing with PowerShell. You don't need to go into the .NET framework, which is what this is, and I'll run it. And you can see the results are right here below the code that got run. It calls into the .NET framework, calls math, calls the static properties sine and tangent and cosine. Colon tells it's a static property. And the reason I point this out is because when I use a DLL under the Excel module, and as you begin to understand this, you can become a better tool maker and do more sophisticated things if you know how to tap into the .NET framework or inside your DLL that you built in C#. Now, the next one I like is really cool. I remember when add type was added to the libraries, and I think it was done by Lee Holmes, and a name I hope most of us older folk know, not the younger folk. And what I'm showing here is with the add type, right? This is a here string, at quote and quote at, that's a here string. Inside, I'm actually showing C#. I'm going to do a public class, create a method with a signature of add. So it's add is the name. It's an integer, returns an integer. It takes two variables, n1 and n2. They're both integers, and all I'm doing is saying add them up and return them. Now this line of code on the bottom, that's the PowerShell testing it, because add type takes that string and it compiles the C# on the fly and makes it available to PowerShell. Take a look, right? So I'm saying 2.5, where we know the range, and I'm saying for each item in the pipeline, $_, I'm passing in the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, comma 6. So, and then I'm going to add them up, and we get 2 plus 6, so on and so forth. So this is yet another way that you can extend your PowerShell capabilities if you know how to do C#. And add type works with F#. So if you're an F# aficionado, whatnot, you can begin to really do some more amazing things, as well as tap into libraries that you didn't know that that do things for you that you may not have inside of PowerShell. And that's kind of the things that I was using when I was building the Excel module. So you saw Python. I always go to the Python community when I want to get inspiration, because they have an amazing ecosystem. Basically, Python got us ChatGPT, right? They built it all using Python. So there's a lot of geniuses in that space. There's a lot of tools in that space. And there's a lot that we can take and then bring over to PowerShell if it's something you like to do. So that's COM, that's Python, that's C#, that's the .NET framework, how to tap into these things. Any questions? So far, so good?
Alan pointed out that you should do less Rickroll because it's kind of rusty.
Okay, so which is the Rickroll rusty stuff?
The tangents, sine and cosine, very rusty on trick. Yeah.
What should I do instead? Come on, tangent, sine, cosine. We got to understand mathematics.
Doug,
okay.
I Holmes play,
okay.
Play Lee Holmes is all Rickroll, where he does the graphics in the.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's epic.
When he used to do that IWR and he would pull that down, that was hilarious.
It still works if you modify the URL. It still works.
Exactly.
Cool.
Get Rickrolled with invoke web request.
Yeah.
Now I got what you meant. I thought it was Lee Holmes reference, but I wasn't sure. Yeah. Awesome. Good. Some of the older folks are on the line. I like that. We even know the tools that these guys played games with. All right, so let's take this a little bit further and see what Export Excel can do. And I hope this, I'll get to more complex stuff in a minute, but I hope this isn't too simplistic for folks. So now here, I'm just going to store in a variable. I'm going to get the process, where company. So you can see I wrote this. I don't like writing where -object. Where company says, okay, if it doesn't have a company name, I don't want to see it. And I'm just going to select 3 properties, company name and handles. I'm going to create a title, right? So just as I would in PowerShell, I can use getDate inside of a string, let the interpolation happen. And then I'm going to take that data and I'm going to export to Excel, and you can specify the title in the title parameter. I'm going to create the table name, processes, and then I'm going to do an auto size. So we can run that up. And notice nothing happens. Right, you'll sit there and go, wow, that looks like it got broke. Okay, but it actually created a file, the PSXLSX. So I'm going to run that Okay, so some people like to use it this way, where you can get a title up top, and I can offset that data that you give me, that you pipe through, and I can offset it to any column, any row, anywhere on the sheet, and then still apply things like the auto sizing of it, right, as well as the filtering and all that kind of stuff. So you can get some pretty cool initial good effects with very little code, and that's one way to do it. Now, you might think, well, why would I want to run all that stuff and not see it? Okay. So that I put something in there called show switch, right? We'll run that up again. And this time I'm doing no fancy formatting or titles. Notice I didn't use auto size, so the data isn't looking good. Out of the box, I don't do it for you because maybe you don't want to do it. Maybe it doesn't work on your system, whatever. So the point being, no, this time it actually, let's not save that. I'll remove it again. So now when I'm building reports for things that I'm looking at it, I use the -show. And then when I'm ready, what I do is I take the -show off, and I'll run this on a server, or I'll run it in a batch process, or I'll run it in an Azure function, or I'll run it on a GitHub action, and then it generates the file. And then I can either, if it's a GitHub action, I can check it into my repo, or I could return it in an Azure function, or I can be running it on a server and then put this in an email, put the file as an attachment, or I can put it in on a share. So it runs extremely well in a headless operation. Cool. And this just goes back and says, okay, let's with and without the -show. And this just summarizes it's a good approach, and in the different places that it is a good approach. Cool. So out of the box, very little coding. You can toss your CSV files and take that same exact data. It can be tab separated. It could be, you can take JSON, convert it from JSON, pipe it into Excel. You can read stuff out of SQL Server. You can read this as invoke REST method to some kind of a backend that has a REST API, and then pipe that data into Excel.
Yeah, as long as it is an object, can do it.
Exactly. If you could, and that's what I've always loved. Early on, when I used to demo PowerShell, I would take an XML snippet, I would take a JSON snippet, a CSV snippet, and I would put them in separate. I would say, here's how you convert a CSV, JSON, XML, and now I have 3 variables, and I can take $A plus $B plus $C, and I get a report, right? I get a bunch of, because I can make sure they all had the same property names, and then this is the sweet spot of Excel. I'm sorry, sweet spot of PowerShell. So now, once you get the data in and it's an object with properties, you can make things light up, and you can make them light up inside of Excel. So awesome stuff. So let's talk about conditional formatting. This was fun to build. So that's just more boring. So I'm going to go after the get services with the status name, display name, and start. I won't run that. You can imagine what that shows. So let's do one conditional statement. So I'm going to get the same service, get those few properties, and I'm going to create a variable called text1 equals new conditional text. So that's a function inside of Excel. And I'm going to say stop. So what that's going to do is say, find every word in this data with the word stop, and it has all the defaults to colorize it. Let's see what happens. Click the run button. Awesome. Okay, can you see that? I think that's pretty cool. Now, I did nothing inside of the PowerShell. All I did was set that all up inside of PowerShell. I took the data, it used PowerShell to set it up inside of Excel. If I click on conditional formatting and I say manage rules, that's what got set up, right? So because I know the range of data, I can plug that in, right? And these are just a bunch of defaults for this type of rule. You can edit the rule, you can delete the rule manually, but that's one of the things you can get going. So let's do multiple conditionals. So now I'm going to take the same data, and we'll do what we did before. When you see the word stop, it'll colorize it. But now when I see the word the text RUNN, I want the text color to be blue, the background to be cyan. If it's SVC, I want it to be wheat and green. And let's see what we do. Now all of a sudden, and you know, people love this for some reason. They like their data to light up like a Christmas tree. So we can do that. So you, again, I set all that up, which is not easy, but then Excel goes to work with its magic. You come in and take a look at the rules. So if somebody's actually using the spreadsheet, they can tweak this stuff if they want to. They can change the colors, but they hit the ground running with a bunch of ideas, or they can just use the report as is. Cool. Also part of the lab of the PowerShell import Excel is not only can you do conditional text, you can do conditional icons. So now I'm going to go after the process. Look at that. Here I use where object. This must have been a newer part of the demo. So again, just going to grab company, name, PM handles. How many people know that you can do a star, mem, star, and that picks out all the properties that have mem in it? I'm talking to a crowd. There you go. I'm talking to a crowd that knows payat, so you should know this. If you didn't, you need to get off. Anyway, so go ahead. Any questions? All good?
Yeah.
Cool. So now you can use the new conditional formatting icon set, right? And now you can give it a range. So I'm saying I just want to go to column C. So company is A, name is B, and PM is C. And I want to do conditional 3 icon set, and the type I want is arrows. Let's run that up. So now what Excel does is it looks at all the data that it's in column C, and I got extra good stuff. So like here, it'll figure out what's below a certain, it'll figure out thresholds. Let me try that again. Did I do all of them? No. Let me remove that. It messed up my cool demos, but we'll do it again. So now we have conditional. So here we can see that this particular process has a yellow arrow, meaning it's in the mid-range. This is below. I might have that wrong. And then there's green, that's above. So letting Excel figure that out. You can click on the manage rules. You can edit that rule. And here's the difference. You can change icons, all the kind of good stuff. You can change the values and the types, like do you want a percentage or formula or percentile? And the cool thing, all of this is available from that conditional icon set in parameters. So you can go set those any way you'd like. I just did the basic defaults. That one was a lot of beer that weekend when I did that one. So moving on. What's also cool, I think, well, I like it because it was fun to build, is on the conditional format, if you hit control space, right, you can see there's 5 icon set, 4 and 3. So I'm dynamically pulling out what those icon sets are. So if as Excel, you don't have to figure out what those that are available. Same thing with the icons, right? You can, there's different types of icons. You can use traffic lights, symbols, flags, so on. And the other thing that's cool is that these are dynamic parameters. So if you want to go into the import Excel module, you can take a look at how this got built. When you change 5 icon set, it also then dynamically looks up the icon types, which are different. Oops, let me try it again. Too many keystrokes. Quarters, rate. So when you're in the 5 icon set, you get different sets of things that you can work with as compared to the others. Cool. So we'll just take a look at another one. Why not? Take a look at traffic lights. So you can sit here and experiment this quickly, and that didn't work. Oh, you know why? This is why I like removing my stuff, because sometimes, not sometimes, but once you have certain things set up, so there it doesn't overlay the previous. So there's the different traffic lights depending on what kind of data you have and what you're trying to do. Cool. Remove that again. So now you can actually mix and match. You can have icon sets and conditional text. So we'll do the same set of icons, and you can also then highlight all the Microsoft stuff. So you can do a lot of different things to draw people's attention to lots of stuff. We're just scratching the surface at what this can do, but that gives you some ideas. And of course, if as you're familiar with PowerShell, you can do a get command on module import Excel. Take a look at all the different functions. I don't think there's not that many. And the cool things is what else can you do with a sheet? In addition, you can see most of the stuff is broken out, so you could actually build up your own import Excel if you wanted a custom way to do it. There's add worksheet, add chart, add this, so you can do all that kind of stuff. So let's go on to the other side of the coin, and we can do things with import data, right?
So if we had time at the end, I think I can show some of this in the demo.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hitting 3 o'clock already, or we're into this an hour already.
Yeah.
Yep. So got a couple of more, and then yeah, I'd love to see what you're doing with it as well.
Yeah, perfect.
So I have a directory here, sales data, and I have 12 XLS spreadsheets, right? January through December. And I also have a function inside of get import Excel that you can do a DIR on sales data, and then you can pipe it into get Excel file summary, and it tells you the name of the sheet, right? The name of the file, the sheet. If there's more than one sheet, it will show you. It tells you whether it's visible or not. It can see hidden ones. It tells you the number of rows for that sheet, columns, the address, and you can actually click on it and launch it if you have a terminal or use Visual Studio Code. So this is a good way, like people come up to me and they say, hey, I've got like these 100 files, whatnot. And I'll say, well, you know, as Constantin pointed out, give me a interactive notebook, do a DIR, get file summary, and send it to me. And then we can take a look at some certain details. So from that, I can do something like read the first 5 records of February and August, right? So let's just run that. So those are the first 5 records from each one. And just exploding it out, right? So go import Excel on that, select first object. So import Excel's in play, but then the rest, once again, you get the data inside of PowerShell and things light up. So you can use all the different tricks that you know, select objects, groups, so on, measure, on and on and on, or other libraries and SDKs and modules that you like to use. Now, let's create a yearly sales workbook. And each month is a separate tab, right? So what am I saying? So I'm going to take each one of these separate XLSXs, and what I want to do is put them all that data from each one into one XLSX, but I want each month named the file of, right? So January, February, March, each of those need to be the sheet name. So here we have like a handful of code. What else am I doing here? Yeah, this is kind of goofy. Input object, right? Import Excel. Now, the reason we have an input object in the module is because piping is slow, right? So when people start doing, some people do 10,000, 100,000, 500,000 records. If you pipe that, it's going to be significantly slower. Input object doesn't look at every item across the pipeline. It just takes it directly and works with it as an array. So, and in here, I'm saying, okay, the work name, the worksheet name is going to be based on the name of the file, just the base name, right? And that's going to be April, May, June, July. And let's run that up. So it's going to read 12, read all the data, create one, and you can see down here on the bottom, I now have all that data auto-sized. So if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I've got these 20 files, I need it all in one, and I want everyone as a separate spreadsheet, you go, yeah, it's going to take 3 days. And then you write 5 lines of code, go to the beach, and you come back and you give them whatnot, and you go write your own tools and have some fun. Cool. So let's move some tabs around, right? So I know that I happen to have January through December. So this is I'm gonna take this, and what I want to do is, I don't like the fact that that data is not in alphabetical order. So I'm just going to list them. This is just one way to do it, because I wanted to show off, right? So I just list January through December, and now I'm going to show there's an open Excel package exists in the module. What does that do? So if you're not piping data into it, and you have an existing sheet, and you want to, a existing workbook with a bunch of sheets, one or more, you can open it up directly, right? So I can open that file, store it in an Excel package, and then all you have to do is make sure at the end that you close the package, because that's what saves what the modifications you did. And I have the -show switch on that, so you can open it, play around with the contents. You want to do formatting, move columns, move sheets, colorize, add pivot tables, charts, so on and so forth. This is the mechanism to do it. Close it at the end, it gets saved, and you can show it or not show it, so you can then email it, so on and so forth. So all I'm going to do is, based on those names of the months, let's put them in order. And now I have January, February, March, April, May, June. Why did that work? Because there's a switch on the Export Excel or on the Add Worksheet. It also exists on the Export Excel called Move to End. And there's a move after, before, and start. So you can actually, it's a way that you can actually affect where the location the sheet is relative to other sheets if you need that. Some people want to see the summary first and then details of their, whatever their transactions. Some people like it the other way. So this is a simple, easy way to manage that. Any questions? So far, so good. Everybody's already seen this, and this is boring information. Nope, no complaints yet.
At the moment, no.
Oh, we got a hand raise. I'm not sure what that is. That raising a hand to ask a question, or it's all good?
I don't see any hand raises.
Oh, I thought I saw Axel, maybe. I'm seeing things. All right, let's go on. Let's go on to easy charting. So once again, I just used the convert CSV. Here's a bunch of data, right? Similar to what I showed initially. And I'm going to splat some stuff. Hopefully we all know what splatting is. So I'm going to create something called an easy chart XLSX. I want auto filtering, auto size, auto name range, and show, right? And I will splat that to the export Excel at the last line. Now I'm going to set up an Excel chart definition. Now, because I do the auto name range, I can say, I can work with my data as I see it based on the names of the properties. So the Y range is price, the X range is product. I want to put a title on that chart, no legend, and I'm going to set the height. It'll open up and I'll get rid of it. So I put the data in and I can automatically have charts. Now, this will be a little weird, but I can then go in here and say, I just want to see drills and nails. And then the chart reflects, but we all know that that's the goodness of Excel, right? It all updates based on these kinds of things. So this is a pretty cool demo or things that I give to folks who want to see the end visualized results. And then they go, oh, wow, I can actually then subset my data right in Excel to find out what I don't sell hammers and saws. I just do the nails, drills, and the crowbar. So, and that comes basically for free. Right? You don't have to set that up from your side. I didn't have to worry about setting that up inside of magic stuff inside of Excel, inside of PowerShell. So it's a win-win for everybody. Let's do multiple charts. So I'm going to take that same data and I'm going to make 3 charts. And I'm going to make one item price and then total sales and sales volume. It's the same technique as before. Once you get the auto name range on, you don't have to worry about the ranges. You don't have to know where it was put. It just, because I'm setting up those property names and the ranges for you, and you can just tell it whether you want legends or not, and you can do the heights, and you can place the actual chart. Here I'm doing row 9 and row 15. So you can place these anywhere you'd like. And now I've got a report with 3 charts. And I was saying to Constantin before we started, somebody actually asked me a question, hey, I want to have my charts on a different sheet. We're pointing to the same data. It took me about an hour to use my module to figure out how to do that. And that was a question and an approach I never considered, but was able to do it. It's completely doable. And once you see how it's done, it's not that hard. It's not, it could be surfaced to be made easier, but that's a testament to PowerShell, testament to modular development of functions to get things done. Okay, so that's multiple charts. And I threw at one point in, I like trend lines. So we can take this data, again, a new Excel chart. I'm going to do a column clustered one, and I'm going to say chart a linear trend line on it. Let's see what we got. Okay, and then there's a trend line, not very visible. But you can actually adjust that kind of stuff as well if you want to see it better. And you can change the colors. So there's more things you can do with sales data and information to show people what they need. And I think that's an R squared value. So maybe too much, too little for people who look at that kind of data. So yeah, experiment with the different parameters and switches on Excel chart definition. There's a whole bunch of them. You can adjust the legend size, so on and so forth. Let's talk about pivot tables. Pivot tables are probably one of my most favorite features. I hail from the mainframe. I was around when SQL databases were invented. Oh, that's old. I was around when they invented OLAP and OLTEP, and I was
So Alan is asking a question.
Yeah. What's up?
What's the best way to update data from a source and override the existing set so that it updates an existing chart?
Oh, that's a tough one. Always going to be somebody throwing in a good one. That's going to take a little bit of dancing on your part. I probably would not do that. Like, so if you know how the chart was set up, I would probably each time do it from scratch, right? Because once you start updating pieces, then you got to update the references. So this has nothing to do with PowerShell. I don't have anything in the module that does that, like magically. If the data expands or the columns expand, if it's the same. So think about it as data shapes. If the shape of the data is 50 by 50, and you're just updating parts in it, yeah, crack it open with OpenExcel, with the OpenExcel package, and then poke your data in, save it, and it should work, right? As long as you're not expanding the number of rows or collapsing the number, or expanding and collapsing the number of columns, you should be good to go. I don't know if that answers your question. It's a good question. Yeah.
I've just suddenly been tasked with doing lots of Azure costing stuff, and I was just wondering if like I could put this month's data in and create a chart, but I get what you mean. It's gonna cause a problem with the references from the chart itself. Yeah.
So sometimes when I get similar questions like that, I suggest creating it all depends, like, how you're delivering the XLSX at the end of the day. If somebody doesn't want to get a new one all the time, you're going to have some challenges, right? But what I would think about would be create another sheet, with all the news, and then delete the other one.
January, February, March, whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Or if they want the same name, create the new one like we do back in the old days. Create a new file, rename the old one, delete it when you know it's good, and then rename the new one to that name. And then they don't even know that the data was updated in place. What did we used to do back in? I was not a COBOL coder. Sorry for the side stories. I was not a COBOL coder, but I had to learn COBOL or about it. And one of the things they had, I
was going to say, Doug, if you're going to COBOL, you should have tried COBOL.net.
I played with all the incantations of COBOL over the years. But this was on the mainframe before the PCs were invented. But yeah, absolutely right. I mean, there is COBOL.net. And they used to have a way of managing data in files, and they didn't have a create, read, update, and delete. The update was actually, they kept the original record. They put an indication of deleting that record and then added the new record. And early on when I saw that, I was like, why the hell would they do that? Never made any sense. And then over time, I was like, oh, that's just much easier to manage the data, because then you could read all the original data, get rid of the old, and just use the modified, the new updated piece. Much easier.
Yes.
So that's what I would do.
History stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So that's that's what you could do here. You can hide the sheet and whatnot. And if somebody has a problem that you're delivering this to, they can turn around and you can say, okay, unhide this, and there's your old data for now. We'll get you the new one later. So there's
also you
tricks.
Can hide columns, I think, also.
Exactly. So, visible and invisible columns. Exactly. Yeah. So there's lots of different tricks in that way. Sometimes when I look at a problem, it's like, oh, I just want to update this in place, expand it a little bit, and I'm done. That's not always going to get the results you want. Cool. So let's talk about pivot tables. So I'm going to grab the same process stuff again, company name and handles, and I'm going to export that to Excel. And so, Alan, you're over in England, I'm guessing. Is that true? So you might. So how many people know the name
Sorry,
James
just
O'Neill?
reaching.
No problem. So you are.
Oh,
How about-
yeah, I know James from a long while ago, actually, Doug, because obviously, I'm presuming you're aware, back in the day, he did work for Microsoft for a bit.
Yep.
And he used to run what was called the Tech Roadshow or something close to that. And he used to tour the UK doing various little show and tells around whatever product stack might be, but a lot of his stuff was around Windows Server or Hyper-V and things
Hyper-V.
like that. But it was, and he used to have a partner in crime. Oh, his name escapes me. Andrew something or other, and he used to do a truckload. Andrew was basically a SQL guy. And so James would do a lot of the server, he had to be whatever it happened to be, and Andrew would do a lot of the data finagling and show SQL demos and things. But it was always really good because it was interactive and, you know, there was always something new to learn. But I know he's done some work with you on your module in terms of performance and stuff.
Yep. As well as added a whole bunch of different things. And the only reason I bring him up is he watched for like a year. He watched me build this and put it out in public and make updates. And then he would send me an email or whatnot, and he'd say, hey, I did some X stuff to your module, but I'm going to check it in at some point. And that went on for another year, and he kept threatening to check things in. And he would always make fun of me because when I started this, it was just all organic. So that's why when you look at this Export Excel, you've got all these switches and parameters on Export Excel, right? Auto size, show, include pivot table, include pivot chart. Here's the pivot rows. Here's the pivot data. So I just thought of James. Yeah, he was tremendous to work with. I learned a ton from him. We learned a lot from each other. He's contributed to a lot of my different projects besides Excel. So let's go back to a pivot table. Yeah, so yeah, I know him. I think I know his partner in crime. Cool people in the community. So you take the target data, pass it through. I want to set up the basic stuff, and I want to include the pivot table, the chart, and then you can tell it, well, what rows do you want to pivot on, company, and then you can send it in a hash table of which data and what type of dimension you want to do, and what kind of do you want to do a sum, a count, or an average? So let's take a look at what that does. I don't know why that's telling me that. So once again, I like this because I get all my data if I want to see it, or I can move around the sheets, or I can hide what I want if I want to give this to a colleague, so on and so forth. So there's all the process data. And then I go into the pivot table, and now I have everything. Again, I didn't do any of the summarization. I just basically said, hey, Excel, here's my data. I want you to do a sum on handles for me and do it by company name. So if I click on this, if folks are familiar or not familiar with pivot tables, over on the left, you can see company and handles. Or I'm sorry, over on the right, you can see companies and handles are selected. And company is in rows, and the sum of the values of sum of handles are for the values. And if you're familiar with how this works, you can go in here and you can change value settings. I want average, max, min. That's all available from the PowerShell module. So you have complete control over it. And if you're familiar with how these things get set up manually, you can now automate to your heart's content. That is something I like doing because that's the way I like to show data. What else do I got here? Yeah, so you can change the different types of charts, right? So the same exact data, change the chart type, and you're good to go. And now I have an exploded pivot table as 3D. So lots of different ways to play with this to amaze and have fun with your friends. I'm going to actually run multiple pivot tables, but I'm not going to show you the code. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. So now, yeah, this is pretty slick. And this was definitely not the actual placement of all this stuff, but uncovering what I'll show you here was a lot of excellent collaboration with James O'Neill. So on the left is the original data, and now I can show the sum of the sold, but I can do it by region, fruit, and date. So I can have a nice nested concept, and I can collapse these things if I wanted to, right down to, east, north, and west. And if I want to switch those dimensions around, I can have it by fruit and region, and these go on. Oh, I want to see it by year. So this really begins to play into data science, right? So that's where I got even more excited. It's like, oh, so I can actually take data, start doing stuff with it, and then this is kind of how data scientists start to look for patterns in data. I want to see it by years. I want to see it by date. I want to see it by region. I want to see it by fruit to start figuring things out. So, and the cool part is, let's see if I can open up, edit multiple. Cool. So even though it's 50 lines of code, right? It's the standard, take your data, whatever way you want, pick out the pieces you want, export to Excel straight away, and then you can I add pivot tables all the way down, right? And it's basically, and I'm exploding this out, this could be a function, so you can sit there and say, just have a function that you can say, oh, it's a cookie cutter, I want 1 to n pivot tables, just change the parameters, the titles, and what data you're looking at. Here's the rows. And what's really cool, this is with James, we uncovered the whole thing about group date part, right? So when you're doing group date parts, that's when you start seeing the explosion, right? The 2017s, and then switching it left to right, and the quarters, you can get some really cool effects right down to the quarter, the month, so on and so forth. So that, again, nothing on my part, just setting up the pivot table. And when you do group parts, then Excel goes, oh, I'm going to try and figure this out. I'll figure out for you from the date, and I'll split that up for you and present it as a UI. So very cool. All right, so what I have, how are we doing on time, Constantine?
Yeah, we have 15 past 8, so we have like 45 minutes.
Okay.
Officially.
So I think I get a couple more things to show the application of this, and then I was going to do a little. I might show you how I do a little artificial intelligence. So I'm sure, how many folks know? Somebody pronounce that person's name. He does.
Jakub Jares.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jacob. Right.
Yeah.
Jacob. He's Mr. Pester.
Yes.
Mr. Pester. Exactly.
Mr. Pester, yes.
He goes to PSConf EU a lot as well.
Exactly.
This year is also there, yes.
Oh, he's going to be there?
Yeah.
Cool.
Please
Profiler and Pester.
Yeah, don't mention PSConf EU to me, because it's sad for the last year or two, because I've not been able to go because where I work at the minute doesn't pay for conferences. So.
Oh, sad.
Dude, you need a new job.
Yeah, correct. I do actually. No, you're 100% correct. And ironically, it's a university.
So
what? You think?
Okay.
Yeah. So,
well, they don't believe in learning, but they're a university.
No.
That's horrible.
It's free.
Oh, it's
and
free?
in your own time, of course.
Exactly. It's free, basically. Right. But you've got to get there, eat your food, all that kind of stuff. That's horrible. So let's take a look at like a measure command, right? I don't know if this is going to work. I may have gotten rid of it. Let me see. I didn't try this last night, and I apologize if it doesn't work, but we'll see. So if I do a measure command, and I do from like whatever, 1 to 1,000,000, right? And I'm multiplying that number by 2, and it takes 2 seconds. So you can install his profiler, which I don't know if he's updated recently, but it was pretty cool. And I'm going to now, so when you can do measure command, you get some basic statistics about stuff, very basic, right? So what Jakob did was come up with a trace script, and I'm going to say get process, right? 5, get the first 5 objects, company name, blah, 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 put it out. And that's output from his trace command, right? So once you do that, he has, do I save it? Yeah. So I run it. You get some indications of what happened. So this is what he collected, right? And I put it all into $trace, the results. And now I can take his top 50 duration, like what were the top 50 commands, functions that I was calling in terms of duration, and it shows me. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. And James and I played around with this as well. We both saw his work. We're like, hey, let's put this through PowerShell, import Excel, and see what happens. So doing all that good stuff, right? I just want to grab some of his properties, text line, duration. I'm just grabbing total seconds off of the stuff that he did and creating a chart, creating a second chart, right? So we saw how to do that. And I pipe all that into Excel, set it all up. And at the end here, hyphen pass through, which we didn't talk about. What's cool about it is that actually creates the file, but it also passes back the object model of what was created in memory. So now you can actually work on it. So if you do add member and you say pass through, right? It adds those, is it add member, add property? If you do add property and you say hyphen pass through, it adds the properties you want, and then it can pass it back to you so you can do more add properties. Am I getting the right names? I haven't used that function in a long time. Add member, right? So you can do member type, and then you can do note property. So you can do all that good stuff. And I can pipe an object into it. I can add a member to it, name it Doug, right? So this follows that model. And so I can pass an object in, add the name Doug to it, pass it back, and then I can further act on the object with a new property name. So that's the same thing here. Create everything you want in Excel, creates the file, pass through, and then what I'm going to do is grab the worksheet, $Excel, sheet 1, and then I'm going to go to work on it and do things on ranges, set the width, do some number formatting, and then I'm going to add some conditional formatting where the hit counts based on the hit count, and I'm going to show something called a data bar. Let's see if this still works. Oh my goodness, awesome. So now that's using Jakob's module and I just ran this stuff and traced my PowerShell import Excel stuff, and this is the different lines, and then I can come here and see what line it was. I can see, I think the name's right. Oh, maybe not. I'm not sure why that's blank. Maybe he updated it and I didn't. But anyway, so I can see what line it was, how long it took, the average, and then I actually sit here and show, this is what I call a data bar. If you put a number inside of a cell and you add and you apply data bars, I think it's in conditional formatting, right? Let's see if we can manage the rules, right? So I'm saying select everything that we put in there, apply a data bar to it, and you can do all kinds of magic. All this is available from the PowerShell. So now I'm taking his data, giving it a visualization, bringing it to life, and I can see the hit counts and durations and whatnot. So I can not only get his great output that he does, but I can actually then work with it in a deeper way. Now, all right, so that's all. Anything you'd like me to show, talk about, and we'll get to Constantin. I'd like to see what you're doing in a minute. That's the end of the what I usually present on this module. We've only put our toes into the pool, the kiddie pool. There's a ton of things you can do with this. I hope it was useful. If there's something you'd like to hear about.
Does anyone have any questions or scenarios or so that?
Except for Alan. Alan.
We have to discuss. Or
Alan's the kind of, he'll be like, hey, can I download a terabyte of data and stir my coffee while I wait? And can it do it sub-second response time?
Okay.
I guess
Sorry,
we will
Alan.
try it out for having some importing of old lists of to-dos into the planner. Because if we have all kind of different table styles, and then we can set up an importer for our users where we can say, hey, you can choose which column should be used for the title, for descriptions, for who's responsible, whatever. And then you can import it and set it to Planner to get rid of the old Excel files from the to-dos.
Awesome.
And that's a really great scenario where I definitely will try this module.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So when you say old Excel format, are you talking about XLSS files?
And no, the thing is that actually the users use the to-do files in new format, but with the problems in Excel that you have to view by your own, you can't set any reminder or whatever planner gives you an opportunities. And that's the reason why we set the old files. So they're modern XLSS files, but in a uncomfortable way.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you get into that, and when you get, I would love to see an example, small if you can. I mean, if
Sure.
it makes sense, I would love to see how that comes together. And the only reason I bring up XLSS, so this only works with XLSX. It does not. It works with XLSX. I'll get it right. with the macro library and with the binary library, but it doesn't work with the old versions of Excel. And there's tons of people out there. And I always, the only way that you can convert that is you actually you can use PowerShell to launch Excel itself, read in the old XLS without the X, so the old version. You read it into the live version of Excel programmatically, and then you can save it, and then you tell it you want the .xlsx version, and then you can use the PowerShell module. So that's what I wanted to bring up. Cool. That sounds like a fun project.
I think so also. Sounds really interesting. Yeah. As I told you earlier, Doug, we use it for reporting stuff. So, for example, we have some backup reports that we have to give to management every week or month. So we have a weekly report and a monthly report of 2 backup systems, and we query both backup systems and combine them into 2 Excel spreadsheets and send them via mail to management, so they can have a look how many backup jobs are failing, why they are failing, and then they can sit the operations team, and then they can task the operations team to sort out the errors or open tickets and so on.
That's awesome.
That's one.
Did that start as a manual process, or did you just went at it programmatically? And the only reason I bring that up,
sorry,
is that there are folks that colleagues that change companies. One colleague changed company and went to Prudential, and he said, I forget what the process was, but they basically had 3 people working on a spreadsheet where they would collect all the information, and then they had to copy paste from sheets the columns and then add and this. And he was like, hey man, can you write me a PowerShell script that can just take those sheets and reformat the data? And that's when I sent them an invoice. And I was like, sure I can. And we put that together, and we took like 3 people, 2 days worth of work down to run a script in 15 minutes. So,
we started to do it manually. So by looking into the tools, and then, there should be a better way so I can automate this. So stuff like this. So, and also management and technical tools, they are not the best friends always. So they want to have spreadsheets or websites where they can view it and filter and so on. So I prepared this for them, but I can't show the code because it's company related. But I can show some other stuff. I have a side project with a colleague of mine where we visualize WSUS data, and we did this, or we do this with PowerShell Universal. And inside of PowerShell Universal, there is a button to export a whole page where, for example, the computer information, so the computer name is there with the responsible persons and the updates and so on. And I used Doug's module to visualize that in Excel.
Nice.
So
nice.
I would share my screen if you are finished, or if anyone has any questions, I would share this, and then
let's take a look at that. I had one more piece I wanted to show, having to deal with artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Do it quickly. So I don't know if folks know that I wrote PowerShell AI module. I released it last year, and I think it's got about 60,000 downloads. And it basically brings ChatGPT into your console, and you can put them in scripts. Subsequently, there's so much change going on in the AI space that OpenAI then released something in November, a whole brand new concept. So I took their Python SDK and ported it to PowerShell again. So there's two versions. One's called PowerShell AI. The other one's called PowerShell AI Assistant, which I'll be talking about next week. So, but in there I have something called AI, a couple things. So you can do things like AI, what is the capital of France, right? And so this is like something you could actually ask a large language model, or you can go into ChatGPT, or you can go into Claude, or you can go into Google's Gemini. And this is the kind of stuff that you can like do. You can get even further. Like I can say, give me a greet function. So now this is the new module that I have, and AI is a function that's in it. Now notice it comes back using Python, right? And it gives me, so from that, give me a greet function, it wrote me an entire Python program, right? And what's cool is if you see the triple backticks, right, that's something you use in Markdown to delineate and to syntax color what you're doing. It gives me an explanation, all kinds of stuff. Now, I don't want to do it in Python. Okay, so some people at this point go, oh, this thing's crap, because I apologize. I'm not allowed to say words like that on the recording. So I can prefix this within PowerShell, and I could actually postfix it, right, depending on how you like to write prose, right? Give me a greet function using PowerShell or in PowerShell. So now I'm talking to the same large language model. This is all using OpenAI, and now I have one in PowerShell. Get really fancy, I could say in Rust, right? And so this is really where you can begin to do things. Now let's get a little wackier, and then I'll show you what I wanted to, and then we'll move on. And I want to see what Constantin did. Let's say I say I'm going to say echo. Who uses echo? I'm going to say go Rust PowerShell. So what does that do? That gives me an array, right? So I'm going to take that same one, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say pipe it to for each, and I'm going to say copy that. Let's do it here, and I'm going to say AI, change my quotes, and Constantin knows where I'm going. So now, oh, that was bad. Okay, so that looks good, right? So a little CLS on the front. Oops. And let's wrap that in a sub expression. Nothing like a live demo. Let's see what it does. So now the LLM is churning out, based on that string I gave it, a Rust, Go, and a PowerShell hello world, right? Now, would I want to do that in production? Maybe not. But what this demonstrates is, in my mind, is marrying artificial intelligence with PowerShell. So it's one of the reasons I wrote the module, right? All of it's just planting seeds, and you can start going to lots of different places. So I have another module, and you can download this. It's called PS Weave, right? And what it does is it comes, so again, I use other communities outside of PowerShell to gain inspiration and see what people are doing. So this guy came up with something called Fabric, and I was like, wow, that's really impressive what you did with prompting. So what I put inside the quotes, it's called a prompt, and we're all going to become prompt engineers, in my opinion. So knowing how to prompt LLMs to get the responses that you want in the way that you want, in the consistency that you want, okay, you have to learn how to write those, and it's different than programming. So what I saw him do with Fabric was actually encapsulate all these different kinds of prompts in a very easy to use system that was always accessible, and he did it in Python, and I was like, I could do that in PowerShell, check it out. And he and I are collaborating on a bunch of different things. So so here's PS Weave, and one of the functions in PS Weave I have is weave-list. So here are all the different prompts. So out of the box, you have almost 50 curated prompts. So these are already done. So what does that mean? So if I also have something called get weave content, and you can hit Control Space that uses dynamic parameters in PowerShell. You can see the different prompts you have. So let's pick one like analyze a paper, right? So this is an actual prompt that you send to a LLM or ChatGPT. And when you structure it this way, this really gives the model what to work on. The hashtags begin to drive it, like, okay, here's your identity and purpose. Here's what the output sections that you want. And it knows how to follow these instructions to give you a much better set of answers. So what's cool is I also have something called an add prompt path. And where do I have? I think it's in Claude prompts. So I took Claude as the Anthropic LLM, which is giving GPT the run for its money. And I looked at they have a whole prompt library, and I took some of them. And so let's take a look at one of them that they had, and it's called, let's get the content. It's called, they have something called Excel Formula Expert, right? Which is pretty slick. So this is what you send. Now, what does this mean? So I can do something like, let me see if I can, yeah. So let's say I say subtract col B from A and put it in C. I don't know how to do that in Excel. Well, you can take that string, use standard piping in PowerShell, pipe it to Weave, and Weave has access to all the different prompts, right? And Excel format. So now this will take, and then Weave will actually under the covers pull what you're doing, pull that prompt from the proper area. You don't have to go look it up, and it almost gets it correct. That's very sad. Well, it actually tells you where to do it, and then it tells you the formula you need to put in Excel, and it explains it to you. Now, that's mind-boggling. Now, to be fair, Microsoft has something called Excel Copilot. And Google has something similar as an add-in to their spreadsheets. So now inside of Excel itself, you can actually do similar thing I just did, and it will activate the same way and then update the cells directly. So I plan on building, enabling something called Import Excel Copilot, right? Which will do something similar. So you can say, right, because now we're working with stuff with PowerShell. So why can't I just do something like, see if I have a CSV file here. Now, this is completely off script for me, right? So I apologize if it doesn't go. So right here I have data, and I can say, I'm going to pipe it into AI, the other one. I'm not going to do it to Weave. Total units by region. I don't know if this is going to work. So now I'm actually passing that data, and I'm out. So I'll leave you to fact check and see if it added it. I sent that data to ChatGPT and just said that, and it came back and it added everything up correctly. Okay, so now from there, I could say export Excel. Right, so I am injecting AI into my process to read my data and create and then I can come back to PowerShell, right? PowerShell reads the file, works with GPT, and then I can take the results and then pipe it back to Excel, so on and so forth. The possibilities are crazy endless. And that's AI. All right, Constantin.
Looking forward to your talk that we are making that. Good. So I've prepared some stuff. I X'd everything out that it's not for the public eye. So let's hope that everything went well. I already executed the script so we can see the outcome, the Excel file at the end. So let's share.
Maybe you want to turn off the recording so in case you didn't, it doesn't show up, but I think
I can
fine.
edit it out later. So
there you go.
That's no problem. So let's go here. Yeah, let's do it like, oh, let's.
So you wanna? Are you sharing or?
No, I'm just some folder switching. open the file again. Just give me a second.
Sure.
Where is it? Where is it? I like pasting something out of a raw view in GitHub, so it's good.
Awesome. Yep.
So, let's switch back. Everything here. Let's do this one. And yeah, now it should. No, I don't have a Git credential manager. I don't need this. So let's open now. Okay. So I think everyone can see my screen, right?
Yes, I can.
So I have prepared also some sample data. So the report that we are going to see, I will show the Excel report later, is it's creating a computer overview of the responsible persons and the update for this specific computer that we are going to see later. And then I do an export Excel. So I will create the Excel file that I want to work with in the process. I will give it a path that is here. I have the worksheet name also, which is called computer overview, and I want to clear the sheet. So if there is something inside it, I want to clear it. That I work with a clean slide, no data before in it, and then I will open the Excel package. So open Excel package path that I created here, and I have it in the variable Excel. So I can work like Doug showed earlier. I can now work with the whole Excel package. I have it inside the Excel variable. Then I get me the sheet. So I can say $excel.workbook.worksheets, and it's the computer overview that I created earlier.
You can shorten that and take out workbook.worksheets, but it's good to spell it out.
Okay, good, perfect. And then I start to do some Excel range stuff. So I think we saw it with Doug earlier in the examples. I created an Excel range. I said, okay, what's the worksheet? So in which worksheet do I need to add the Excel range? I did it from A1 to D1. So that's the notation in Excel to combine multiple columns. Yeah. Then I say, okay, I want to merge it. So I want to merge A1 to D1 in one single column. I want to bold this, so everything that is inside of it should be bold. I changed the font size and I added the value. Here the value is heading. That's this stuff I did it in line 83. And I want to horizontal align it to center. So that's some kind of some parameters that the set Excel range is having. So it's very overwhelming if you just do a dash and then, oh my God, 50 parameters. But exactly. You can work your way through this.
There's a lot you can do with Excel.
Yeah,
that's why there's lots of parameters. Yep,
definitely. Yeah. Then I will create another range from A1 to D1. I will merge it also. I will write in, or I will put in general information. I will also center it, and so on. So I create some kind of stuff before I add the values in, and yeah, then I took a an array that is here inside the file, so that's defined inside the file. Fill it with OS name, computer group name, last update name, connection state. I do it in the B column, not in the A column, so that it's beside the text that I set in the range. Yeah, and then I create an Excel table. I said, okay, I want to create an Excel table. I want to go with the range parameter, and I said sheet.cells from A1 to B7. So I said, okay, this one that I just added should be a table, and the table name should be this one. The table style should be something like this. And I have show header false. Why? Because I'm not having any headers. And then I said, okay, I want to visualize the responsible person. Some from A9 to D9, I want to merge it, and so on.
Nice.
And then I did some dynamic stuff because I don't know at the moment how many responsible persons do we have for a server. So I said, okay, I want to start at the row 11. I say, okay, do we have any responsible persons? If we don't have any, we put this text here. If we have something, then we will start. Then we'll start adding first name, last name, responsibility, and then we for each it. Here you see the why I did the dynamically calculating stuff. I have to it's A11, B11, C11, and for each responsible person, I will I++ it. So I will add 1 to this, and there I have a dynamic stuff for the Excel range. Then I have to know where I should go next. So I have to add to 11 the count from the responsible person, then add +1 to it, that I have the next line. And yeah, then I define another table. Then I dynamically calculated a range. So it's getting very complicated, and then I do the other stuff with the I+1 to some Excel range calculating to the for each again. There we have some stuff with the date and time stuff because I use German dates, so I have to use a parse exec and so on because Excel and dates they are not the best friends.
So there's a nice example on line 146 of using the .NET framework. Cool.
Yes. So we have the system date time. This is the parse exec function. You give in the date, and then it parses to this format, and then it gives you back the date. And here you can in line 149 you have here the number format of short date, so that it will shorten you the date. So that's one of the number formats that you have built into import Excel.
The number format stuff is definitely cool. And if you work with dates a lot, like I do with data science, the formatting of dates is super easy.
I tried it with the custom stuff, but I can't get it to work. So I have to do some parse exact date magic to tell Excel that it's at a date.
You have to use that. I don't. We don't do that much magic.
Yeah,
cool.
Because the date that the date is a string, not a date. And if you do a parse exec, then it's a date time, and then Excel knows that it's a date.
Exactly. Good stuff.
And then the last stuff, the thing what I told Doug earlier off camera was also the auto size stuff. So I called at the very end, because at the very end we know which column should be wider and which not, and so on. So you can call the set column commandlet. And you could say, okay, column 1, it's the start row 1, and then you should auto size, and so on.
Excellent.
And then you can close the Excel package, and then I will stop sharing and show you the end results.
So basically, this is COBOL in 2024. Boy, you really put the Excel module through its paces. You really exercise a lot of pieces. Wow.
Yeah.
Does that all works?
That all works. I will show you the end result now.
Nice.
It was, I think it took me two or three weekends to create the stuff. That's not that was a bit time consuming, especially the pain with the auto formatting and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, when you get down to that level of detail where you want the report, wow, that looks really great.
Yeah.
When you get it down to that kind of what you're doing, are you putting filters on that too? Awesome.
Yes, yeah. So the last table was also show header and show filter. So you can, if you get an add Excel table, you have the show header and show filter. So if you do export Excel and say okay table and so on, it will automatically get filtered. But if you create a table with the add Excel table, you have to tell Excel to filter and to define the header and so on. So
that looks great. I like the zebra striping in the dark gray and the light gray.
Yeah,
because that's medium 22, right?
Yeah. That's the medium 22 table style. So you see, okay, I have here a merged top row, then the general information and the responsible person and so on.
Nice.
It's also merged and bold and have the font sizes. And then you see we have the auto size on a column, because I tried to add the auto size at this level, and then we have here this one, and this is wider, and then the auto size is not matching and so on. So that's why I did it at the end, so that we get the right auto sizing. Yeah, and you see here we can filter and so on. That's
nice.
That's what
so this is a side project you're doing. Are you going to give this to anybody in your company or elsewhere, or just for you?
Yeah, I will give it to my company back when I'm finished with my colleague. Yeah.
Yeah. This would make a great. I'm being selfish. It would make a great blog post or something.
Definitely, yeah. I have some lined up, but at the moment it's a bit stressful because of the PSConf training I have to do.
Yeah. We could be writing stuff forever, but this is really And when it would take a couple of passes at this over weekends to get this right, because it's even if you did it manually, right, it would be a bunch of time. Yeah. But once you get comfortable with the set Excel range and the columns and how this stuff works, it's just like, wow, I can knock out some really slick reports.
Yeah. So if you get it one time, it's easy. But it's also good that your module is open source, because I had a look at your codes at some time to get the insights and see what functions are called, because I also checked the DLL out, that if we have something inside, because I don't know what it was, but some feature was missing, or
in the DLL.
Excel had it. Excel had it, but the DLL does not. So there is a feature, I think, in Excel which is doing the auto formatting a bit with a little bit of brain, so that you can that you open the file, and if you save the file, then Excel does the auto formatting with the saving, but you can't call it with your Excel module. So we have to come up with some kind of workaround, and that's the set column stuff.
So the sad news about import Excel is that I was not going to go down the path of handling all the. That was a great demo. Thank you. I would love to see a video on that you do. I'm going to tweet about that.
Thank you.
Put more stuff on your plate. So I use ep+.dll because I didn't want to write all the XML. So basically, if you crack open an XLSX, it's all XML based, right? And that's that's when the United States government sued Microsoft, being an antitrust, and they said, listen, your formats cannot be proprietary. So they made it all XML, and then they started writing tools for Microsoft so that you could actually manipulate the XML inside the XLSX, and then other tools could work with it outside of the Microsoft world. So they started writing something, they stopped doing it, and then these two guys from Sweden took it and made EP+, and they took it unbelievable. They did an unbelievable amount of work. And that's the tool. I was like, I'm not going to write all that stuff. I'm going to use it. So the guys from Sweden, though, they made version 5. So I think I'm at 4.2. They made version 5 of EP Plus. And then they said, okay, now you're going to have to start paying a license fee. And I was like, and I talked to those guys and I was like, well, you know, they said they heard about what I did. Companies ask about the thing that I did. And I was like, well, can we come up with some kind of an arrangement? And they were like, at this point, we don't want to do cross-country type stuff and whatnot. So they have unbelievable capabilities in a new version, like slicers and all that kind of stuff. At one point a year or two ago, I began to move my stuff to there because they changed the offsets. Like you have all the offsets in yours, like +1, ±1. So they changed from 0-based arrays to 1-based arrays, all that kind of nonsense.
Oh, okay.
So you can't, it's not a drop-in replacement, but I went through a whole bunch of that stuff to make it work a certain way so I could see the new capabilities. But then it's like, okay, people are not going to pay for a license. And at that point I was like, I want a piece of that. So that's the bad news. So we're stuck at this 4.2. So I don't know, but I hear you.
Let's see. No, that's not a critique. That's that's the thing. What I experienced, and then if we come with a workaround, then no problem.
Somebody just recently said, I think on M365 or something, they changed like medium 22. They changed the colors, what they do. So like if you're using medium 22, for example, whatever they were, it changed it from like green and yellow to purple. So, and they're running these massive batch processes to generate these for clients. And they reached out to me and they were like, it's purple. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And found out that Microsoft changed it. And then over the week, they changed it back. And then a week later, they put it back to purple. So now these guys have actually come up with, they're actually cracking open the XLSX and updating the XML directly. And so I think it's one of the things up on the GitHub repo. I think they showed how to do it, but it's like, this is the danger. Anyway, that was an awesome demo. Love to see the output. It's great.
Perfect. Good. If you have any questions, or do you have any questions? I see some stuff in the chat. Thank you from me also, Raymond, for creating Automated Lab. Really cool project.
Just to be awkward, I have another question for Doug, but it's probably not. It's not really a difficult one, I think, in the sense of. So I was trying to export a massive number of files and their information from an old NAS device. Directed that towards export CSV, the built-in thing, and it took days and days and days and days. And
the built-in Microsoft one?
Yeah. And I thought, hang on a minute. Well, bear in mind, there was 355,000 files in there, but grabbing the whole list and all the file information only took about 10 minutes. So I thought, all right, hang on, there must be a way of making this go quicker. So I went and had a go with import Excel to file that contents to a CSV, but it wasn't really any different performance-wise. And it may be just a fundamental something underneath the hood somewhere, but I just wondered if you had any idea why it might be so slow.
Yeah, and now I'm going to curse because I fucked up. So 2 things on that. Which version of Excel of the export Excel did you use? Right, you probably used the newest one.
Relatively new. I can't remember exactly without.
So yeah, go ahead.
But the built-in export CSV was slower, but not by a huge amount.
So if you use the newer version of Excel, and I have not gone back and fixed this, I came up with a really cool thing in the import Excel or I forget which one, but maybe it was. But I made it so you could use a star instead of specifying the worksheet name. You could say asterisk, right, and that would get all the sheets and work on all the sheets to do things. And I was like, oh, that's a cool feature. But the way I implemented it was I did not. It was not good. It works, but if you start going to thousands of files and thousands of rows, it went from sub-second or 10-second response time to like 3 hours. And I have not gone back to fix it. So it's possible, but I'm not sure if I was on the import. But anyway, so it's possible. So did you use the -input object on the export Excel?
I tried a couple of different. I think the last version I tested it was just I was driving it the same as the export CSV, which just piped the object to export Excel. Sorry, to piping it directly into import Excel to generate a file.
So that's going to be the slower way. So the example I show with the sales data for the January through December, if you use the -input object, you get a faster, it's probably not going to make a difference with that much data that you're doing, but that is the fastest way to work with almost any PowerShell command. If you piping is awesome, right? It makes life easy, simple code.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get into large amount of data, then that's just too slow, the parameter binding and so on. So there's a -input object parameter on the export Excel. I think it's also on CSV. So if you pass in the data, so
that's
if you
that
read
object
it,
to the
input. There you go. So if you actually pass the data, whether you're reading it from from a file system, and if you use, I would use like the .NET framework to do it, and then you do it on that parameter, you're going to get the fastest capability. That may not help you with all that data, but that's the fastest way to get it done.
Okay, I'll give it a spin. It's just entertaining to see where you can find any kind of improvements. It was just the whole task took like
days,
2.5, 3 days, and it was like jeepers.
Well, think about it. You know how long it takes to train an LLM, a large language model like ChatGPT? Takes 90 days. So you have all these processes running for 3 months. And part of the talk I'll do next week. So everybody knows NVIDIA. So NVIDIA just had their conference, and they just announced
and the share price went up again.
They introduced a new chip, the 208 billion transistors. And that will now take that 90-day process of training a GPT down to 3 days. And it does not take, it fits in a single rack. So now imagine all those racks inside of an Azure container. Not Kubernetes, but all the bunch of those. You've now just take the compute power around artificial intelligence to a level that's ridiculous. So why did I bring that up? I have no idea. Oh yeah, so you go from days of reading data, data scientists will sit for 90 days, and the process will fail after 30 days. Then they have to go back and figure out why, and then start it again, and then it's another night. It's 90 days from that day. So yeah, these kind of large scale stuff that we do with lots of data
are over then. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
I sent him a message saying, "Can you get one of those so I can whack it on the back of my phone?"
It's coming. Actually, I just bought a Rabbit R1 back in January. It's
I saw the post you made about it. So it's a little like handheld gadget that just does LLM stuff, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. It's got an LLM as a operating system. That's going to become the new thing, because it's not just it's just an operating system, but it communicates to its cloud provider. So yeah, so security nonsense all aside, that device is how everything. So smartphones are going to be gone. It's not going to be about using apps. It's going to disrupt the app market. So you don't need to have all that power locally. You can make a request, and it can go out to the service and then do all that calculation on 208 billion transistors. It's a whole new world. But that's next week's talk. Good stuff.
Nice. Okay, so if you have any, do you have any other questions for Doug? Or it's about Excel?
We can talk about AI. We can talk about Weave. We can talk ask me anything. But we have gone 2 hours, and I appreciate so many people hanging in there that long.
Definitely,
as well as you, Constantin. Awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for hanging out. And yeah, we'll stop the recording. So can talk now off camera.
Oh, now we can say the real stuff.
Yes.